Hello, and thanks for deciding to watch this science highlight. This highlight is about Integrated Geoscience Observatory, or InGeO, which is a project supported by NSF EarthCube and CSSI awards to SRI International. The goal of the project is to improve reproducibility and collaboration among geospace scientists in both data and software resources. The happy faces shown on the slides belong to the InGeO team: Ashen Reimer, Pablo Reyes, Todd Valentic, Leslie Lamarche, and myself, Asti Bhatt. So, what is our motivation behind creating this project? As we all know, science is supposed to be self-correcting and improving through a collaborative process. An important part of that process is scientists being able to reproduce research results by other scientists by following their methods, both to make sure it is correct and to build on it going forward. However, as is true in many scientific disciplines, reproducibility is complicated and hence is not something we think about methodically. While reproducibility can have many meanings, what we can try is to achieve computational reproducibility, which means that given enough information about your computational results, your peers are able to reproduce your results. As an example, Jane has written a paper which talks about results from her experiments. Now, being a good scientist, Jane would like others to be able to fully understand them, check her work, and build on her results. How should Jane go about doing it? Turns out that computational reproducibility has a spectrum, on one end of which is just publishing her results like a figure in a paper without giving any additional information about data sources or how she arrived at the figure. And on the other end is a fully reproducible result that includes data, software, and crucially, a computing environment that allows anyone to reproduce the result without relying on their own compute environment. Next, Todd Valentic will talk about what are the specific challenges to reproducibility within the geospace domain.
Thank you, Asti. I'm Todd Valentic, one of the architects of the InGeO project here at SRI. I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about some of the roadblocks that we encounter when making reproducible systems. As Asti mentioned, computational reproducibility allows us to share our work with others so that they can rerun the same analysis used to produce a figure or paper. However, there's an additional aspect that we want to consider, one of preservation. Can we rerun the same analysis, not only today or tomorrow, but years from now? When you think of a traditional journal article, you can go to the library and pull a journal off the shelf to access an article published a century ago in exactly the same manner as one published last year. You simply open the journal and start reading. Nowadays, as our publication processes grow richer with the desire to include data, algorithms, and computer code along with the journal article, will we still be able to access these in the next century with the same ease that we do today? This slide highlights some of the problems we experience that can hinder both long-term preservation as well as the sharing aspects of reproducibility. We start by looking at the software tools that we use. If you rely on proprietary software like MATLAB and IDL, or perhaps commercial operating systems such as Windows, you don't have the legal rights to redistribute those. Even if we have the executables for these programs, starting them up is often controlled by license managers that might only work on a specific network or locked to a particular computer or a license key. Likewise, if you rely on a subscription for software or a data source, it won't be usable by others or even yourself years from now when the subscription has expired. These issues can extend to hardware. If you're relying on specific hardware features, for example, code tied to a unique brand of GPU, you might not be able to find a compatible system in the future. The subscription issues can also apply to hardware if your system's running on cloud-based services like AWS. Obsolescence is another problem. Can you still access an older version of the operating system or processing software to recreate the environment used to generate an old figure from a paper that you wrote years ago? A related issue in building reproducible systems is tracking the specific versions of code and software updates. Perhaps your software needs to work around a bug in a system library, but breaks if a newer version of the library is installed that doesn't have the bug. Reliance on external network APIs and services can be an issue. There's no guarantee that these will still be accessible years from now. So we want to look at being as self-contained as possible. That isn't to say that you shouldn't rely on such services. Just keep a local copy of any data that you retrieve. But keeping everything local can have its own difficulties. What if you use a large data set in your analysis? Can you really keep storing everything you use? The practical limit on long-term storage sites today, like Zenodo, is around 50 gigabytes. What if you have terabytes of data? What are you going to do in that case? Lastly, there can be organizational restrictions on sharing your work, algorithms, or data sets. There can be issues with patents and intellectual property rights that limit your ability to share your work. And if you're using machine learning, can you redistribute the models and training sets that you may have acquired elsewhere, but are the core of your analysis? The good news is that in recent years, there have been a number of developments that help in our goal of reproducibility. The advent of machine virtualization and containers, along with open source operating systems and programming languages like Python and R, along with their rich libraries, as well as the vast collection of community source code that's accessible through sites like GitHub, let us construct systems that can package everything that we need to reproduce our results and actually have a chance of standing the test of time. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ashton, who will describe a solution that the InGeO team has come up with called Resen.
Right, so I'm going to talk about the command line tool that we developed called Resen. I'm going to highlight the NABCs that guided our development process and then show off a little bit of a demo. So the need that we were trying to address here is that researchers just want to do research. They want to be able to perform their analysis, share it with other people, and have those people be able to reproduce their analysis. So the approach we took was to provide pre-installed software in a platform-independent container, such that it can be shared system to system and have the research results reproduced identically. Now, it's not enough to just develop a tool. You also need to encourage proper usage of that tool. So we want to also encourage best practices for performing research in a reproducible manner. So the benefits of this approach is that by using the containerization technology, we can encapsulate the entire analysis environment, including the data, the code, everything. And by providing an easy to use tool, it just makes it simple for researchers to use it and focus on performing research. There are other tools that exist that kind of do half of this. They don't both allow you to share things and encapsulate the entire computational environment. So what about actually using Resen? So Resen is used on the command line, and you can create, import, or export what we've called buckets. And a bucket is the entire computational environment. And within each bucket, you'll have a core that you choose when you create the bucket. And this core is the pre-installed software environment. This has all your Python packages that are pre-installed for you. Then you can add your own code and data sets to it. And we imagine that everyone will have multiple buckets, one bucket for each research project on your machine. And then you will share these buckets with collaborators or export them out to, say, Zenodo or something where they can be cited with a DOI. So what does it look like to use the tool? So after you've installed it, you simply type Resen, and now you're inside of the command line tool. There's a help that shows you the list of commands, and we're just going to create a bucket. We'll give it a name. We'll choose a version of the software stack, the core, and then we can optionally mount in some storage locations. And then we'll start it up. And when it starts up, it will give you a JupyterLab interface. And so all of your work, all of your analysis is performed within the bucket via this JupyterLab interface. So you can create Python notebooks, you can work on the command line, or you can edit text files, etc., all within this interface. Then when you're done performing analysis and you want to share it, you simply type export and the bucket name. Give it a name for the file. And this will take a few minutes, but when it's done, there will be a tar archive that you can upload to Zenodo, get a DOI, cite it in your paper, or just share this with any collaborators. Then I'll hand it over to Leslie, who will talk about the online version of Resen.
RESEN Online is the same software environment we've been discussing, but it's available through an online interface to make it really easy for new users to get started with the system and immediately start using the Geospace software packages that we have available to really produce research results. The idea is that you'll be able to log in through an account just with your web browser. Don't have to do any kind of installation even of the RESEN tool. So to show you how this works, we're going to go ahead and go to the InGeO website. This is the main web page. You want to click the Sign In tab, which will bring you to this Sign In page. If you haven't done this before, you can sign up for an account, but otherwise, I'm going to just enter our username and password. So here you can use both notebooks, Python notebooks, and the console. This is just an example account we have. So you can see you can run code in these notebooks, do plotting, the same things you're used to being able to do. A really interesting thing that we've included in the all of our users' online accounts is this examples directory. So if we go in here, we have datasets and we have tutorials. If we click on tutorials, there are a variety of tutorials available for you to kind of help you get started and see what packages are available and how to use them. So this is a basic one, getting started with RESEN, and this will walk you through a lot of the steps of what is in RESEN, the kind of research you can start to do immediately, and do in these Jupyter notebooks to produce results using kind of a combination of lots of different geospace softwares and data sets. So if you are an advanced user and want to do things that are require large amounts of computational resources or something like that, use the downloaded version. But anyone who has lighter usage or just really needs to try this out or see different things that you would be able to do, this is a really good option, and we highly encourage everyone to make an account and play around with this. And now Pablo is going to go ahead and talk about the new things that are in the next release of RESEN.
Thank you, Leslie. So the next release of RESEN-CORE is the 2020.1.0. It has a read the docs page where you can see the changes from the initial release, and Python packages that are included in this version with both the Python 3.6 and Python 2.7 environment packages listed with links to the source and documentation. The new packages that are installed in this version are PlasmaPy, PyDarn, Virus Client, and Visualizer. Each of these packages, this is for plasma research. PyDarn replaces the DavidPy that has been deprecated for visualization of SuperDarn data. Virus Client is an interface to access the ESA's swarm data and models. Visualizer, developed by Ashton Reimer, reads and plots MISR process data. Matplotlib widgets have been included, and a citation helper, which I will show you how to use. The widgets with Matplotlib allows you to zoom and to do interactive plotting using Matplotlib. And the citation helper is used through a terminal. I type in cite help with the path for your Python scripts and notebooks are, and go over them and get all the imports that you have done. I recommend to go to the InGeO website for more information on the project. For instance, how to install RESEN locally, how to use it RESEN online, and how to contact us. Please feel free to write us to this email, and the InGeO team will be happy to answer all your questions. Thank you very much.